What are the three most important benefits that you're going to receive in your hot yoga practice or any type of yoga where you practice the physical postures, or in Sanskrit, asana? Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Barkan. I've been practicing hot yoga since 1980. Started teaching in late 1981. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the like button if you're enjoying this video and share it with your friends or anybody you think may benefit from this video. So what are the three benefits? The physical, mental, and spiritual. Yoga is a combination or a union of the mind, body, and soul. But let's talk about the definition of yoga before we talk about the specifics of the benefits. When you ask somebody what's the definition of yoga, many times they'll say it's a union or a yoke between the mind, body, and soul. And that's correct, but it's incomplete. And why I say it's incomplete, in my teacher training programs, I have people think of yoga as a sphere. And the bottom part of that sphere is you practicing on yourself. And that's where the first part of the definition comes in. You are getting your mind, your body, and your soul connected. When all three come together, when they connect, it's an extraordinary experience. And it's an extraordinary way for you to lead your life. But the reason why it's complete, because yes, we are getting the mind, body, and soul connected. We're preparing it for the higher part of the sphere, and that's the connection to the universe. That's the connection to the spiritual side of yoga. That's the connection to God. And it's not the yogic definition of God. It's not my definition of God. It's your definition of God, or whatever God means to you. So yes, we're getting the mind, body, and the soul connected, but we're preparing the mind, body, and the soul for the true connection of yoga. Why they chose the word yoga in the first place. The yoke between man and God, or woman and God. I love the metaphor of the Sistine Chapel, where Adam and God are just about to touch fingers at the very top of the very center of the chapel. If you've ever been to the Vatican, you've got to go see the Sistine Chapel. It is awe-inspiring. The first time I went there, I looked up the room. I couldn't leave the chapel. It was just so extraordinary. But back to the metaphor, the God and man just about touching fingers is the perfect metaphor for what yoga means. It's not just Adam getting his mind, body, and soul together so he can connect with God. And that's the definition we're talking about. So the type of yoga that I teach is called hot yoga, and it's a style of hatha or hatha yoga, which is, by the way, one of the most misinterpreted words in all the modern day yoga. And that's one video I promise I'm going to make, because hot yoga, Bikram yoga, Barkan yoga, any derivative from the hot yoga world or the Bishnu Ghosh world are all styles of hatha or hatha yoga. So this is a very intense, athletic approach to the asana in practice. Now there are other styles of hatha yoga that are also very intense in the physicality of the pose, like Ashtanga yoga, Iyengar yoga, and Vinyasa that comes out of the Ashtanga tradition. These are what they call forceful, which is what the word hatha means. And that's a misinterpreted word. A lot of people think it means the sun and the moon, and it does. But the literal translation to hatha is forceful. So it's forcefully awakening the energy through the practice of primarily asana and pranayama. Now, of course, you can get physical benefits by practicing the postures if you don't do a more athletic style of yoga. But let's talk about what I know, what I'm an expert at, and that's hot yoga. And yes, the physical benefits are extraordinary. So let's talk about what's pretty much common, what you would think is a benefit: flexibility. You are going to gain flexibility exponentially in your yoga practice. So when you first start out, it's going to happen right away. You're going to see instant results. If you check out this video, I talk about how many days you should be practicing yoga. I believe you should be practicing, if you're serious, at least 4 days a week. 5 is great, 6 is ideal. And if you're a teacher, you should be at the 5 and 6 times a week minimum if you're really serious about improving in your practice. And I talk about it in this video. If you're doing it every other day or a couple times a week, you're always in catch-up. You want to build momentum by practicing on a regular basis. So let's talk about what I'm an expert at, and that's the hot yoga world, flexibility. And a lot of people think, oh, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. It's like saying, I can't drink water because I'm thirsty. You want to do yoga so you get more flexible. You got to get your ego out of the way. Nobody cares that you're sitting in the back if you're really tight and aren't able to do that much. They're focusing on their own practice. You want to focus on yourself. You can use them as an inspiration. But you're going to gain flexibility, I guarantee, on a regular basis if you're consistent. And we use the heat, which will also help to increase your flexibility. So flexibility by far is definitely what you would consider to be one of the main benefits. Number 2 is strength. It's not just about being flexible. My mother, God rest her soul, had extraordinary flexibility. She could sit in lotus position all day long and watch television, but she couldn't stand and balance on one leg for more than 3 seconds to save her life because she didn't have the strength to support that flexibility. So in hot yoga, in vinyasa, and other styles of yoga that are on the athletic side, you want flexibility and strength to be on an even keel. You don't want to be more flexible than you are strong and vice versa. And I tell this in my class. I say, look, if you're stronger than you are flexible, then you have to think loose and relaxed in your practice. You got the strength to maintain your practice. You don't have to worry about staying strong in your position because you already are strong. And vice versa. If you're more flexible than you are strong, you got to think strength. You got to think stability. You got to maintain that position to allow the flexibility and strength to come together. And that's what makes the practice so challenging because it's a demand of flexibility and strength combination. I work with a lot of athletes, professional athletes in my career. Check out this video and talk about how I work with the Dolphins and the Marlins and the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers. Zach Thomas, one of the most famous middle linebackers, definitely in Miami Dolphin history, but in the NFL as well, was an extraordinary athlete. All pro, I don't know how many years. He took my class and he thought it was the hardest thing he'd ever done in his entire career, exercise-wise. And why is that? Because obviously they're working hard. If he's in the NFL, their practices are extremely demanding. So why was the hot yoga class the hardest thing he'd ever did? Because it's going against the grain. Because he's so strong, he doesn't have that range of motion. So now think about a standing pose like standing hip to knee. You got to maintain this position, but you have to have the flexibility to also maintain it. Because if you're too strong and tight, the oxygen gets cut off and you're not going to be able to hold it as long as somebody that has the flexibility and strength combination. Now, on the other side of that coin, if you're more flexible than you are strong, it's also going to be challenging for you to maintain your balance for a long period of time because you don't have the strength to support that range of motion. So it's also going to be challenging. That's why the yoga practice, especially in the hot yoga world and other styles as well, I'm not just saying only hot yoga, but the flexibility strength combination is extraordinary. And you start to think about how you're improving your practice. You want the flexibility and the strength to be, like I said before, in an even keel. Eventually, you're going to be ambidextrous on both sides of your body, flexibility and strength-wise as well. So flexibility and strength, pretty much you can predict that those benefits are going to be extraordinary in the practice. But here's something you may not think about. And that's the energization that comes through the practice. And the reason why our bodies are becoming energized in the practice is the way we're manipulating oxygen into the body through the practice. So let's talk about the opposite of that. Let's talk about weightlifting. If you're doing, let's say, curls, and you're lifting a weight, there's only so many times you can lift that weight into that curl position. At one point during the contraction of this movement, you're going to create lactic acid. And all of a sudden, there's no more oxygen coming into the muscle and you're going to have to stop. Have you ever seen pictures of people running a marathon and all of a sudden the lactic acid has taken over their body and they can't even walk because the lactic acid has taken over? Now, in yoga class, we're doing the exact opposite. We're actually manipulating the oxygen into the body by stretching. And how we do that, my teacher always used to say, his favorite thing was contraction, relaxation, which is a very common theme in the martial arts. We contract to relax. So in the Barkan method class, when we do our standing poses and we get to the floor for the first Shavasana, I always say it's the second most important moment of the class, because we have contracted all the areas of our body in the standing poses, and now we lay down in Shavasana, and in Shavasana, we're allowing the blood and oxygen to flow into the open channels that we just created. These channels we call in yoga the NADIS, N-A-D-I-S, the NADIS. These are physical ethereal conduits that are flowing around us and through us. Some schools say there's 72,000 of these conduits. Some say there's 300,000. Commonly it's known as 72,000 nadis. So how are we getting the oxygen into these areas? Not just the physical, but the ethereal body. Contraction, relaxation. My teacher was Bikram Chowdhury, and he used to always talk about his practice when he was younger. Now, Bikram used to always exaggerate, In fact, on his 50th birthday in Beverly Hills, they had a big party at his school up it was the second floor and on Wilshire Boulevard. And a few of the celebrities came. I think Martin Sheen was there, and I don't know if Julia Prowse was there. A famous singer from back in the day, Frida Payne, was there. And I was asked to be one of the speakers at Bikram's party. And they said it was a roast. So we were roasting Bikram. If you don't know what a roast is, in America, they used to have it on television all the time. They would roast celebrities, and comedians would come up and they would make fun of the celebrity, and that was the roast. They were roasting him by making fun. So we were doing a roast for Bikram. So I came up, and my speech was, Bikram loves to exaggerate. So if you are new to the Bikram world, when Bikram says 1,000,000, it's usually about 1,000. If he says 1,000, it's probably 10. If he says 100, it's probably 2. So I remember afterwards, Bikram came up to me, he says, Boss, he used to always call everybody boss. Boss, people didn't like what you said about me. I said it was a roast. It was supposed to be making fun of you. He says, I know, it was a roast. We had a pig in the back of the kitchen. He didn't know what a roast was. So he used to say, let's take it with a grain of salt, that he would practice 18 hours a day. We, as practitioners in his apprenticeship program, there's only 3 of us back in the early 1980s, we were just trying to keep up with Bikram's standard. So we did 4 classes a day, sometimes 5, which is absolutely insane. That's about 6.5 hours, 7 hours, which is insane. 18 hours, I don't know. Maybe he did it when he was young. Maybe it was 8 hours. We could take off at least 10 from that, from Bikram's exaggeration. But how were we able to do 4 or 5 classes a day? We do 3 in a row. And then we'd go off and have lunch. We'd drink our lunch. We'd have smoothies and vegetable soup because we were so dehydrated. Then we come back and do a 4th class. How were we able to do that much yoga? Because of the oxygen being pushed into the body. You could do the physical practice all day long, and we are proof of that. Mentally, it plays havoc on your brain because it seems like it's so much. Now, the room wasn't quite as hot as it is today. Back then, it was around 98 to 100. Now they have way up to 105. So that was, I don't think we might have been able to do 4 classes a day at 105 degrees. This is the old days. But what was the toughest part of doing 4 classes a day or 3 in a row? The hardest was the breathing that we did before the 3rd class started. So here we are, we're doing 3 in a row, not even a 10-minute break in between. 9 o'clock, 10:30, 12 o'clock advanced. Boom, boom, boom. Here we are at the 12 o'clock class, and we're doing the breathing. This is how we start the hot yoga practice. And I remember saying to myself, oh my God, I'm about to die. And then I'd look over at one of the people that were in our teacher training program. His name was Paul Gurley, by the way, the famous one that was one of the people that inspired Yin Yoga. I look over at Paul and I go, okay, well, if he's doing it, I can do it. And that's what inspired me. But it was the mental part that was tough, not the physical. Which brings us to the second benefit that you will achieve in your hot yoga practice, and that's the mental aspect of yoga. The mental aspect will be a derivative of your body getting strong and flexible, especially in the hot yoga room. We're sweating, we're releasing the toxins and poisons, and as a result, it has an extreme calming effect on the brain, on the mind. I talked about before that the first Shavasana that we do after the standing poses is the second most important moment of the class, but the most important moment is the last Shavasana. So now we're laying in Shavasana, especially if you're doing an athletic practice, like in the Bikram world, the Barkan world, or Vinyasa world. You're going to be laying there, you're going to be spent, and then your body and your mind are now more willing to let go. There's extreme calm that happens in the mind. I would leave my yoga class every morning in the old days, and to this day, it actually gets better. As I'm driving home, I just have such an euphoric feeling because the way we're moving the body, we're clearing out the poisons, we're clearing out the toxins, and the nervous system and the immune system are eavesdropping into each other. I talked about it in this video recently. And as the nervous system is calm, as the immune system builds, they talk to each other, and it has an extraordinary calming effect on the mental aspect of your life. They call this in yoga Santosha, contentment. You are in such an extraordinary place of calm and relaxation after the practice. It changes your life forever. So we talked about the physical, we talked about the mental, the spiritual. Mind, body, and soul. So what effect does it have on the soul? What effect does it have on the spirit? Recently, I just launched a meditation course. If you're interested in taking the course, it's an 8-week on-demand course. There's a link in the description below, and I guide you through the process. So now that we got our mind and our body in place, now the soul is more willing to connect. And the concept of yoga is to shatter the illusion that we're separate. And how can we realize that we're not separate? In meditation. But the physical practice, especially in the athletic forms of yoga, and I'm not just saying hot yoga, vinyasa, ashtanga, whatever type of yoga that you're into, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be an athletic practice, but when you're into a practice of asana that has that calming effect on the mind, it nourishes the soul. So now the soul is more willing or more able to connect, to find the immersion. So once again, if you're interested in exploring the spiritual aspect of yoga, which you can within your asana practice, but I believe you need to take more concrete steps onto the highest technique of yoga, and that's meditation. That's one of the reasons why I created the Barkan Method meditation course, is to help you guide you through the process, because a lot of people are lost. They don't know how to meditate, and when they do, they get restless and they get up really quick because they just don't have the discipline to stay there to quiet their mind. The meditation course will help you in that process, will help you to stay focused. And then I also say, if you're doing meditation and you can't meditate past 5 minutes, then make the 5 minutes your first goal. Just do it for 5 minutes. Give yourself a tangible goal. And then the next week you can go maybe for 8 minutes and build from there, and eventually you can go for a longer period of time. And then when you get into the meditative state, the spiritual aspect of yoga, it all comes together. So I used to always say to my people in class, we balance the body to quiet the mind to nourish the soul. And that's how all three come together. So now most yoga schools, including my school for 39 years, focuses on the asana. We focus on asana and pranayama, which most of the time people think of the physical benefit. They come in so they can lose weight. They come in so they can get in shape. They get stronger. They get flexible. Others come in for the mental side, to relieve stress. Not many come from the spiritual side at first, but then they adopt that concept a little bit later on. So the physical, mental, and spiritual, when they all come together, it will change your life. Yoga is such an extraordinary vehicle to get you to the point where you have the immersion, where you have the connection. So remember the sphere again. We're connecting our mind, body, and soul, or yoking, or yoga, to prepare it for the immersion with the higher part of the sphere, with the universe, with the spiritual aspect, with God, or whatever God means to you in your own practice and interpretation. And those are the three physical, mental, spiritual benefits of your yoga practice. So that's our episode for today. I thank you for watching. My name is Jimmy Barkan. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell, hit the like button. It helps to boost the video to so many more people, and I appreciate that. And I'll see you at the next video. Bye, guys.